All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stick around, though, for this session. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carlos Iniguez. Very happy to be here with you today. Represent the Gen Accelerates team based in Miami, Florida, along with Dr. Susan Amat, who you all met in the prior session. And today we're going to be talking about attracting scale-ups and developing soft landing plans that work for entrepreneurial hubs. And the reality is that nobody wants to hear my voice for that long. So I have an amazing cast with me today, very dear friends and people that are doing this work on the day-to-day. So I'm just going to quickly introduce them, and they'll dive in a little bit deeper about everything in this world that they're responsible for. Off to my left first, Hadi Saeed Al-Shakouri from Saudi Arabia. He's an ecosystem builder. Yatin Thakur from Gen Asia, based in Dubai from India. And Swathal Kumar from India as well, represents ecosystem building work through Startup Scale 360 in Abu Dhabi. So I would like to kick off by just show of hands. Who here is currently operating, leading and or supporting an accelerator, an incubator, or some kind of an ESO, entrepreneurship support organization, that's kind of scratching their heads about what we're going to be talking about here? Good. So there's a couple of hands. Nice. Thank you very much. Setting the tone, I think one of the first things we got to look at is just, defining soft landing plans in particular by just kind of going back to the first step. Soft landing, what does it mean to us? Because, we hear the word tossed around and everybody kind of gives a little different interpretation of what it means. So maybe we can just start there. Let's start off with Swathal.
Thanks, Carlos. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shwetal Kumar. Like Carlos said, I'm from India, living in the UAE for almost 21 years now. Work predominantly for a sovereign fund based out of Abu Dhabi called Mubadala Investment. And I also part of the team to launch an ecosystem for Abu Dhabi government called Hub 71. And that's how my experience actually came from building ecosystem for the Middle East market. Also launched for the Ministry of Economic and Sustainable Development in Tbilisi, Georgia, called the Crossroad. So to define what is soft landing platform, is essentially the program is created to attract international talents, to create employment for the company, to build the economic. In very short, that's how the soft landing platform is created by most of the countries. And what we see from the UAE perspective is was also to create the soft landing platform in a way that the UAE become a landing platform to expand to the wider MENA region. As you know, that UAE is a small country, whereas if you consolidate all the MENA countries, then we are like talking about 300 million population. And that's how a country look at, it's not just sometimes looking at that country level, but sometimes supporting to grow in the region.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Carlos, for moderating this session. So when we talk about soft landing, I think the major focus is, first, are you ready to scale? How do you assess that? And at some point of time, we feel that it's important for companies to get a feeler of a region before taking a call to finally establishing a permanent presence over there, for which it is important for them to understand the region, meet the relevant stakeholders, meet potential first set of customers in a new region, and eventually figure out the scale-up strategy. So I think through a proper soft landing program, that's what we focus on. How do we cover all these 4 parameters and support them with scale-up, because that's the final intent.
Okay, thank you, Carlos, for the intro. So, my perspective, the soft landing is helping startups land softly in a new territory, in a new country. That goes through different incentives, different needs that needs to be fulfilled for the startup to scale from where they're coming from to another place. The other point for the ecosystem that will be hosting those scale-ups, they should think about it from a prospect that there's certain technologies, certain industries that are not available in the country that will be hosting those startups. So by offering them incentives to expand to different territories, especially to localize a frontier technology, it has different benefits for the country that's going to host them, whether it's training people, whether it's filling gaps in the ecosystem, where there's certain technology that needs to be localized down the road. And it should not be very general, so should be very specific for what needed in that region. Because the startup, before they move to another country, they should think of it, am I going just to grab a quick business, one-time thing, and I'm going to be leaving, or I'm going to be there for a longer term? So those questions needs to be answered, but as I mentioned, the incentives should be in a way that is easy for them to move from one place to another, where they can land softly.
I'm going in for the hard landing now because, I mean, ultimately, one of the things that it really boils down to, I think, and everybody has touched on the bigger conversation here, which is around economic development, first and foremost. And the primary objective of why this work is done, right, is because you live in a country that is looking to attract talent, to set up an entity in this country, to work and to operate, to grow and scale, to hire people, generate revenue, add to that tax base. I think one of the tricky things, first and foremost, as I have noted, and in just some other conversations, is that there's really two sets of priorities that come at play here. We have our federal level objectives, right? National priorities around how do we build and create, these pipelines of people, right? And then on the flip side, down below, and I saw all of the hands that went up, we're probably a little bit stressed out about, okay, so how do we do that, right? Every one of these national initiatives requires us as implementers to do that work day to day, to build a structured program, right? To actually make the hooks that will get people into our facilities, into our centers, right? To run through our programs to then grow and scale. And there are a lot of different, initiatives here that our panel is going to be able to talk about. So I'd actually would really like to learn a little bit more about that, Hub 71, the work that's being done in Dubai, in Saudi, across the ecosystem of really what are these priorities, when it comes down to it. How do we build those programs? What has worked in your context to make that ministerial level initiative become real on the ground?
If you look at Middle East, predominantly people talk about the oil, right? It's so rich in the oil and all. And Dubai actually built a model about tourism. But the whole entrepreneurship ecosystem and the culture started not very long ago, to be honest. It's just 5 years around that time. So it was needed because, the market, if you look at it in the UAE context, there were not many jobs as well, right? The government job was very high paid, and of course, a lot of local Emirati, they prefer the government jobs. And then the expats who come to Dubai or Abu Dhabi or generally in the UAE, they get into the private job and some in the government job. So there's a gap needs to fill. So government understood and wanted to build a whole new ecosystems, attract entrepreneurs, attract innovations, because of course in Middle East it was very less. Now we see some really good startups coming up, very innovatives of late. But then there was a gap definitely needed to fill. I can speak about Abu Dhabi when I was part of building ecosystems. The one thing what we learned was looking at Dubai. Although I live in Dubai, by the way, but in Dubai, it's slightly matured than Abu Dhabi, but at the same time, it's a bit fragmented. But there are so many micro ecosystems there, and then one of the problems which noticed that the startup within the ecosystem, then they don't know what's going on in the other side, right? So you sort of a ring fence, and you work with the different enablers, then which mean that you limit the scope. So this was a problem. So then hence there was definitely consolidation needed. And I still feel there's a consolidation required today. But in Abu Dhabi, that's something which we learned that that should not happen. And hence Hub 71 become an anchor startup ecosystems. And government said that we just need one and everybody should work with Hub 71. So whether it's accelerators or incubators, Hub 71 essentially got its own incubation facility through how we work. And then, collaborating with the universities, partnering with venture capital funds, even attracting good mentors, arranging a lot of networking event conferences. So that's everything was done in Hub 71. So that's something worked very well in my view. In Hub 71, we attracted some. When we launched, it came with 22 startups roughly, and then now we have like more than 150. Now, I'm not anymore with Hub 71. I'm not an official spokesperson, so I just put a disclaimer. But I still connected with all the ecosystems in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and of course in the UAE. In Dubai, In5 which is backed by a Dubai government, also doing really good job. But one of the things what I feel is working well is that In5, which is focusing more on a very early stage, even at an idea stage or pre-seed level. And so that's a great entry point for any startup who want to enter into the Dubai ecosystem or In5. And Hub 71 come at a later stage with different incentives and all. Similarly, Sharjah has different programs. So like SRTAP got very much industry focus, like Industry 4.4 focus, Maker Village. So I think that way, if you see, they're finding its own niche and trying to attract startups in the UAE. So that's where the ecosystem has growing.
Thank you, Carlos. So I will continue where he started. Saudi Arabia is the biggest country in the GCC region, with about 35 million people living in the country. Since the announcement of the Vision 2030 by the Crown Prince in Saudi, the plan to shift the economy from 100% dependent on oil to have a knowledge-based economy. So that requires a higher contribution in the GDP from the SMEs. So that required different pillars to be needed in place, whether it's economic reform and social reform and others. So a few things been in place. First, the ease of doing business was very difficult before to enter the country, to start a business in the country. So now about 60 countries, they can get on arrival visa to Saudi. The investment required to have a startup in Saudi used to be for a larger scale companies, where now it's easy through the Ministry of Investment with the entrepreneurial license. The venture capital model wasn't as big as it is right now, so there've been two entities being established, which is the Saudi Venture Capital Company and Jeddah Fund of Funds, where back in 2015 or 2014, there's like 2 or 3 VCs. Now we're talking about 40 plus VCs in the country. Another thing with multiple players in the ecosystem, we were able to attract international names to be in the ecosystem, like Techstars, 500, Plug and Play, and other accelerators in the kingdom. The incentives also, especially for Scaleups, I would mention there's a new government initiative which is called NTDP, National Technology Development Program, where they help a startup to relocate to the country when they're in the Series A and beyond. So what things do you need as a startup to expand to another country or to start a startup? You need funding, you need ease of doing business, and you need a fast mover in terms of legislation and government regulation. So I believe those 3 things, they're in a place. So if we talk about the fintech sector, from 5 years ago until now, the number of startups in the fintech sector doubled. And as someone who works in a VC, as we speak, we led the round of crowdfunding a platform that being ranked as the 9th largest investment in a fintech in the world by CB Insight. That goes back to the ease of doing business. That goes back to the open dialogue between government entities to have all the regulation and legislation in place, especially when we were able to introduce the open banking policy. So I think all these pillars, they help to contribute to the GDP. So yeah, that's, I think, what it is.
So I would talk more about if you talk about the macro stuff, what matters to a country. So I think we have seen one, there are countries who are promoting entrepreneurship, and second is countries who want to support expansion, and then there are certain countries with finally welcoming new entrepreneurs. So if I give you a more Asian perspective, right? So from an Asian perspective, we have seen there are smaller hubs like Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, who came up with different kind of policies to welcome entrepreneurs. So Hong Kong has the Science and Technology Park, which is exhibiting downstairs. We have the Cyberport. We have Enterprise Singapore, we have ACE in Singapore, and then we have Taiwan through various government-led initiatives, including our friend David Kuo's Accelerator, Through these programs, you get a fast-track entry into the country. And these agencies really support you with establishment. But once your establishment is done, the local governments have also been very supportive to help you in expansion of the business. So one is establishing your base in these regions. And now what we are getting to see from a Middle Eastern perspective or from an Indian perspective, we had our channel in India called Invest India, where we laid out the red carpet for a fast-track entry into the country. Or UAE lately came up with new regulations to fast-track visas for investors, whether it was in form of a regular investor visa on setup of a business or a golden visa in case you were at a scale-up stage. So what happens, we have seen a lot of country-to-country coordination. So an Enterprise Singapore or an ACE Tech or a Cyberport really supports founders to enter these regions, and if they are doing so, for their expansion, the home country actually subsidizes the cost. Whereas wherever you are going, we see a fast track movement wherein from setup to getting your banking up and running, if all the paperwork is in place in countries like India or in UAE, especially Dubai, you can get everything done in about 10, 12 days, and you don't need any approvals. So that's where we are getting to see a lot of push happening, where like governments are really taking that plunge and really pushing their founders to scale up, and the countries which are neutral territories or which are hotbeds, they are also welcoming entrepreneurs and they are allowing them to move quickly.
We have burgeoning ecosystems, we have developed ecosystems, we have those that are in between. I guess one of the things that I was really curious about too, and getting the perspective. So, I mean, one of the things that I think really kicks off, this is not that hard of a process, right? There's a very structured approach to the key inputs of what's really required to make soft landing programs work. A good service stack, right? Things that are involved with access to those business advisory services, for those companies that are coming in, the market development and business development pipeline and opportunities to be able to kickstart sales in whatever country, in addition to local curation of anything that's related to lifestyle, right? Those creature comforts that I think everybody's going to need to consider when they are choosing to move somewhere else. So there's really no secret sauce to this in reality, right? The plan, though, right, is in how good does it work, right? And how good are you at doing that work? And I think a lot of that really comes down to trust, right? Because they're trusting us to be able to do that work. And that's a big challenge and a big hurdle to go through, especially when there might be in certain ecosystems lots of different actors, right, that are in this space, all competing and vying for that person. So how do we build that trust? What do we have to do in order to make our center a hub of activity, including that space where entrepreneurs trust us with their new businesses that will be scaling?
See, we look at a lot of entrepreneurs when they want to get into the different market. What they look at is two things, right? Very important is access to market and access to capital, and these are two key things that any the ecosystem or soft landing program should provide. I think again there are many actors that will play a role. It's not just limited to one. I'll give you an example in Abu Dhabi. Like for example, Abu Dhabi Investment Office came up with an amazing grant program. There was like the fund approved by the government was up to $1 billion zero equity grant, right? If you're really innovative company, you come over there, they can even support for infrastructure developments, even R&D and every other the facility that can help scaling up the startups to different part of the MENA region. Similarly, what I have seen that Mubadala, my previous company, basically what they have done that they formed a $150 million fund. Mubadala invested a lot globally, but realized that lately that you need to do something for the region. Similarly, in Saudi Arabia, like what PIF and other similar entity have done. So $150 million, then they split into certain amount for the direct investment, and then it's the fund of fund. And that attracted a lot of VCs from different part of the world because they found another jurisdiction where they can set up a feeder fund or master fund. So hence ADGM, Abu Dhabi Global Market, become an important actor that you have to come with the right framework for the VC and framework fund of fund structures. And that actually really attracted a lot of funds to move to Abu Dhabi, and even DIFC also attracted fund to move to DIFC. Hence, it's become a sort of a competitions for the regional players, like back in the day when a lot of companies were setting up in Mauritius, Singapore, Cayman Island. Now this become a new jurisdictions to look at. Oh, there's a fund as well, and it's a safe. It follow both of these. Entity follows English common law, so you create a lot of protections around that, right? So it's important that how each actors play important roles and work in a collaborative way, so that it really supports that soft lending program, which can be led by Hub 70 or it can be led by Infi or in Saudi Arabia or anywhere. But you need to see that government actually, as a policymaker, also come with the right policy, right frameworks. As Yatin mentioned about Invest India, it's really working good what India is doing in terms of creating the whole startup ecosystem, the amount of capital allocating, and it's going to through the right funnel as well. So you also talk about the mentors and business advisors. Everybody then see this automatically follow the herd.
So from my perspective, I think, Carlos, it's very important for soft landing players, whoever is running the program, to figure out what's their real competency, right? And how do they add a value, plus how relevant is a region for a scale up, right? It may not be, because there are possibilities that, like we have seen, there were a lot of companies who build IoT related solutions, and they struggle with the components and chipsets. So they don't have access to a basic market like Taiwan. They've never thought about it, right? So it makes sense to take them over there. But if you are trying to build a heavy service-led business where you require a lot of people, it makes sense to be in India. And if it is just a business which is looking for an efficient distribution system or an innovative solution where you just need to be in a neutral market, that's where you probably choose to be in the Middle East. So I think it is very important, one, for the scale-up to understand which regions do they need to tap into, and then the scale-up the soft landing operators need to understand how are they adding a value. And by adding a value, they need to understand when you are coming into their, when a scale-up is coming into their region, are they fully equipped and well connected with the ecosystem where you can actually provide them fast track support for a smoother landing. So just to give you an example, like I can share about how we operate in the Middle East. Now, in a place like Dubai, in last 3 years post-pandemic, Dubai said we want to attract new talent, and they have been on a vision to add about 2.5 million new people into the city. To add 2.5 million people, the broader objective is to bring in about 40 to 50,000 founders into the country every year. Now, in order to bring those 40 to 50,000 founders, you need to make sure that they are getting certain benefits. And these are not monetary benefits, right? The government doesn't do anything. But what they did, they created an attractive place for investors to first move in. And that became, it started becoming a hotspot where every investor said, maybe I should be living in this region. So that's where we look at the top tier, that fine, can we bring in like 1,000, 1,500 funds, investment managers, or high net worth individuals who will actually bring in the capital. Once you have the capital, obviously it attracts a certain level of skilled talent. And for bringing that skilled talent, then there are processes where we are able to put them through a structured program, through different regions, through different zones, which are earmarked within the city. And whichever zone is relevant, you can literally opt in and get enrolled and get support anywhere between 3 months to 3 years for establishment of the business. So through this entire process, what Dubai has been able to achieve is a very streamlined, fast-track process where if you are coming in as a founder, you walk in with your suitcase in 36 hours, you have your identity in place, you have your visa in place, and in probably next 1 week, you have your banking up and running. So you are ready to do the business. I think that's really cool. And then obviously you have the programs which ride on top of that to support you in establishment of your operation in the region.
Okay. So I'll continue where the gentleman stopped. So 3 things we would look at it, as I mentioned earlier, like the capital, the ease of doing business, and the market size. So in terms of capital, as you mentioned, like we have the PIF, the Public Investment Fund, and they have a couple of investment arms. So we'll talk about one in particular, Sanabel Investment, they deploy closely to $3 billion per annum in investments, whether it's in Saudi or across the globe. And the other element also that we have to mention is the ease of doing business. So as soon as you get your documents set, you can issue your CR in Saudi in 180 seconds. So that's another thing. Other factors are important, which is, I think, to distinguish the Saudi market from others, is the market size with the giga projects that are happening right now. So if you look at NEOM, it's $500 billion new region that being developed in a country. The human capital as well, with 35 million in population. Very young population with 70% under the age of 35. That what makes it attractive. If you look just through the giga projects and the reforms that are happening under the PIF, whether it's social, economical, or recently even in sports, the interference of government for things that are not or will not be done by the private sector as a start. So they will fuel the engine to get it going, and then basically they will diversify for something else. So in terms of, for the startups in particular, there are I would say 3 or 4 programs that are interesting for startups. There is an accelerator program, it's called Taqaddum by KAUST, King Abdullah University for Science and Technology. And they're doing phenomenal work in terms of research, from putting the infrastructure whether for investment, whether for a soft landing program, and whether for them basically to train founders at the seed stage to be ready to scale their businesses. Another program which is based on Riyadh, which is a new entrepreneurial hub. They just established their new campus 2 days ago. It's called The Garage. This one is basically attracting startups. Now we have startups, I believe, as of the numbers of 2 days ago, for 54 countries in the kingdom where they're operating. They're having the incentives from co-working spaces to grants and so on. And another factor or another player, which is also I mentioned earlier but not in depth, is the NTDP, the National Digital Development Program, National Technology Development Program, where they have one of their pillars. It's called Relocate, where they fund startup and Series A to move to the kingdom, and they will handle all the expenses for them for 2 years, including subsidizing the salaries for their employees they're gonna hire locally. So those are, I think, incentives or indicators for founders, as what Carlos mentioned, to build the trust they can basically have a lot going on in a country with high GDP, which is also has been mentioned as Saudi is the fastest growing GDP out of the G20 countries.
Can I add one thing? I think one thing very well working in Middle East or MENA is the cross-border investments. This is really game-changing. Like, even if you're a startup from Yemen or Syria or even Morocco, it's been funded by VC fund in the UAE or Saudi Arabia. A few years before Egypt was not in the map. Now Egypt is the third largest, right? Third largest startup, the ecosystem. Number of the fundings happening is growing there, and many of this fundings done from predominantly from UAE and Saudi Arabia. So that's really worked very well. That actually created a lot of like a bigger market for a startup coming, whether they come to Saudi Arabia or to Bahrain or Qatar or Dubai, UAE, doesn't matter. You still have a bigger market, and there's a lot of investors look to invest in your company. The other thing which I really liked working very well, like we work very closely with Department of Health also, and some of the startups that we advise, they go to Department of Health. So one thing is, yes, every country has its own, healthcare jurisdictions. Apparently, in the UAE, every Emirate's got jurisdictions for when it comes to the healthcare. But still, a startup, when they want to go beyond UAE, they give a reference letters, so that the one regulator giving a letter to another regulator saying that this is the startups which was incubated or gone through their program, and they feel that they have a really strong potential to even to go to the different markets. So those sort of a collaboration I've seen really working well.
Adding to a lot of this, some of the details that have been delivered about building trust. I think one of the things that transmits a lot of peace to many founders that are looking to take their countries across borders and trusting somebody with that first step, which is the most important one for this scale plan that they're going to be undergoing, is really the person that's in front of them that has to sell this thing. And many times, right, and we're not at fault that this is a reality, the folks that are in front of the ESOs, right, spearheading this work, are not entrepreneurs themselves always. And how do you speak that language, right, to an entrepreneur to be able to tell them, I've scaled, I've done this work, and I know exactly where you're coming from when it comes time to do this, right? That type of dynamic, it's not always the case that it exists, right? But we can overcome that as well. And I think one of the most important things that we have to consider here is that if we can't lean on that type of experience, right, who do we lean on in order to do that? And I think our frontline support, in this case, one of the essential pieces about what it takes to make these programs great is your mentor network, right? And everybody that's here on this panel does that work every day, which is really, really cool. So, when it comes to the mentorship piece, right, and helping somebody take that first step into, whether it's Saudi, whether it's into Dubai, whether it's into the Emirates or anywhere else, right, that you might be working, right? You as mentors, right, in that type of role, right, what do you do, right, to help these soft landing programs take that next step?
So I think, Carlos, you rightly said it is very important for most of the soft landing experts to have the entrepreneurial experience, and if you don't have it, it's always tricky. I think in our case, what really worked is, that the group which we formed, thanks to Gen, all the Gen MDs came together, and they were basically entrepreneurs who were promoting entrepreneurship in their countries, and now they are supporting the scale-up programs because they understand the hard challenges. So when they come in and their set of experts come in, pretty much all of them have gone through the grind. I think for us, the major reason for my program to work in Dubai is because in the last 2 years, I went through the grind. And when anyone is coming in, they know, okay, he did it very recently. He did it well, understands the process. So let's go with it. And we have kind of, and I think as we scale up, we have just templatized that entire program and plan. And we are just pretty much figuring out which companies across our portfolio in the region are ready to scale into which markets. And then we just put them on that template, and the process trickles down.
Actually, we've spoken a lot about the Middle East, to be honest. It's not about the Middle East in general. So if you look at soft lending platform, any country, any region, it's very important that you need to see that the startup is coming into the right ecosystem, right? The ecosystem where it is, there's the key enablers where government bodies are there, where you'll see there's a good accelerator programs, some good incubations, incentives. The corporates, sometimes corporate ventures, they play vital roles. University access to the talents, the research facility, all you have, and the mentors and all are there. So you need to see that you are actually coming to the ecosystem that is actually providing all the support. You are at the end of the day, you are the linchpin, right? You are just in the center. Everything is around you. So what is, when we as a mentor advise that, first of all, are you ready to scale up, right? Do you really want to come, and why you want to come? I think my last session with Dr. Susan was all about mentorship, 1 hour. We spoke a lot about that. So, but I think it's an important lesson which startups needs to know, that why are they coming to that country, and again, what benefit they'll get, what is the market, how to grow into that market. Whether it's Australia or New Zealand, right? I mean, or from here, can they go to Japan or Korea or Singapore? So I think it's all about like scaling up, and then how you can that ecosystem can provide that good connections or networks, even access to the capitals, what sort of the grant available from the government or the universities, how they can tap those fundings. So there's a various things one should look at. So as a mentor, that's what we provide, like the guidance, like if they're coming into any country for looking at the specific soft landing program, how that particular ecosystem add value to your growth, how it will help moving the needles.
Okay. I think mentors, they have to be entrepreneurs to work with founders. That's that's number one. So we can define them in different categories.
So maybe the startup should know when they are selecting a program, they should do a due diligence on who's running the program.
Yeah. So usually they call VCs are lazy entrepreneurs. So they will inject money into startups, but they want them to do the work for them. An experience like you have to wear the hat of the founder if you want to be a mentor. That's why even for startups, when they go to raise fund from investors, they always question, should I go to with an institutional investor at first, or should I go with angel investors? Always there is no right or wrong answer, but it's been advised to go with angel investor who have the background of the business that you're doing, because definitely they will bring a value to you, and they will connect you with the right people based on their experience. Another important factor, if they have the entrepreneurial spirit, they will be passionate about what they're doing. That means they will be able to take it to the next level with passion. It's not a work, it's a passion, which is the main driver should be for the founder, because every founder is taking a high risk of being a founder, right? I think, I don't know if it's 2 or 20% of the world employed by 80% of the world. So, yeah.
We're going to do a little bit of a lightning round here to close up with the last 4 minutes. And I think I want to boil it down to just one thing here. So, you got your mentors, you as a founder, you know exactly the type of services and support that need to go in. You're trying to reconcile this national government initiative, right, with the work that you actually have to do on the ground. I think last but not least, in the detail that we should probably talk about is telling that story, right? But, talk numbers, right? And I think the data counts, right? What type of impact do these programs have? And, right, how best can you tell that story, right, with the economic development data, right, that you're always putting out? And I think that piece is the cherry on the top for today's convo. So how about if we kick it off, Swethal?
I think reporting is very important. The rules and regulations, policy, everything's come from top. But at the end of the day, on the ground who are implementing, they need to come with real good data, right? And how this data can be articulated or transmitted is through good reporting. It has to be transparent as well. So the kind of impact that ecosystem or soft landing program have created needs to be really well articulated in the number that how many startups really scaled up through this program, helped benefited, got funding and got into different market. Or if, MENA is still a small market, and we have not seen still an IPO route, but the way we reported the 2 IPOs via SPAC route, and that was really good success story came out from MENA. 2 of the startup went to the IPO via SPAC. So we still not IPO matured, but I can see that more and more companies going to go to IPO soon in 3 to 5 years horizon from Saudi and from the UAE and Egypt.
We have one already IPO'd.
Oh yeah, very recently, right?
A year ago.
Year ago, yeah. Thank you for the correction. And then, two acquisition happens. So that's kind of a data shows that the ecosystem is growing, and the startups are benefited from the support from the grant, the support from the whole other enablers in the ecosystem, the accelerations program, how that help. The collaboration with likes of Techstars or Plug and Play or Flash 6 Lab, anything, or Antler recently. Now, how is the startups from those programs are really scaling? How they're able to even attracted capital at the demo day or at the later stage? So those numbers, the stats are very important to show. And in addition to that, I think very important to highlight is about the employments that each startup's created in that ecosystem, how it directly impacting the economic development of the countries, whether it comes to deep tech, quantum computing, or space, on all those. So those are very important data to be shared.
So I guess we'll just jump into final thoughts about the data, like about 30 seconds each for you guys.
So I think from our side, the way we assess it is what is the turnaround time of your entire landing process? How much revenue were you able to generate in what amount of time? And how much investment were you able to raise, if that was the case? So I think if I specifically talk about what we have done, we have seen typically in last 1 year, we ran different programs. Some were very short programs, some were just info session or pitch day kind of things. But we handpicked startups. 80% of them actually ended up sticking around in the city. We gave them a pad where they were able to. Initially, it took us about a week to establish them, and we reduced that time to 3 days or under 3 days. And we have seen at least 30-35% of the companies have successfully raised money, and the balance companies are at least surviving in the local region, which is pretty good for us because it is an expensive region to operate from.
As Carlos mentioned and as Swethal mentioned, that needs to be just transparent. So there is a great initiative that coming from the Minister of Communication, Information Technology in Saudi, saudiecosystem.com. You see founders, you see investment around it, you see startups.
Whew.
Okay, we made it. We survived, 10 minutes to spare. So I'm going to adjourn just by saying, well, first, thank you, everybody, for attending. And thank you to Swethal, Tayat, and Tahadi for imparting some knowledge about this. As we move forward with this work, right, it really does matter the day-to-day, right? What we put in is what you're obviously going to get out of it. Please tell those stories, right? Build that trust with those people that are going to be looking to entrust their baby, right, their business to you, right? And work effectively within the system that's been set so that you can actually take care of them the right way. It is magnetic. The impact does happen. And I think last little detail here, as you're moving forward into maybe expanding the offering, when you look to create these plans, right, there is a network of people that can help you in order to do this work, right? Because those ESOs also need mentors too. So if you want to keep chatting, we'll be in the village for the next hour. So thank you very much.
Thank you.